Hello and welcome to another edition of the Bryan and Ryan, whatever you call this thing. Glad to be here with you on this Monday. How you doing, Ryan Peterson?
Well, it is Monday, but besides that, I'm great.
Good. I'm Brian Houston, by the way, and we are excited to talk about the Cowboys and their 38-31 loss to the Seattle Seahawks yesterday. The 12th man absent, but it didn't really seem to matter any. Get your impressions first of all on a lot wilder ball game, I think, than anybody thought was going to be the case.
Yeah, I had a friend that's a Cowboys fan text me in the fourth quarter that they couldn't believe that game, and my response to him was, I would get used to it because I think you're going to see a lot of games like that this year. I think, Brian, what we're seeing, the Cowboys have a ton of offensive talent. Dak continues to make big plays, and I know he's taken some heat for the interception at the end, but Dak played he had 500 yards. But the defense isn't good. So now they were playing Russell Wilson, who is on a historic pace. But I saw and the Cowboys have had some bad defenses, but they've given up more points than they've ever given up through 3 games in franchise history. So that kind of tells you where they are right now. The good news for the Cowboys is I think Dak gives them a chance every game. And I do think that division is so bad that I still think the Cowboys will finish with a winning record and will win that division. But the defense right now is just not good.
I'll tell you something. You mentioned last week concerns over the offensive line. Now, yesterday was a reason to get concerned over the offensive line because they completely shuffled that offensive line and actually ended up keeping Dak pretty clean in the second half when they moved Zach Martin to tackle and they benched Treat. And they brought in Biodzik, is that right? From the center from Wisconsin.
Yeah, the rookie, and he may end up getting to keep that center now.
Hey, listen, I'm fine with that. They need to get their best 5 offensive linemen on the field, and 2 undrafted free agent tackles ain't getting it done. So their offensive line is a wreck right now. This is one of the sloppiest football teams that you'll ever see, and is it because of a new coaching staff, no OTAs, very limited time out on the practice field when they had camp? I heard a report that they might not have done any hitting during that time, but they absolutely killed themselves with penalties. Offensive penalties, wide receivers jumping off sides, defensive penalties when you had a chance to get off the field. It went on and on and on. And you just thought, how is it the Cowboys even have a chance to win this game right now at the end, playing as sloppy a football as they play right? Special teams are hideous right now. 2 missed extra points, a missed field goal, I think. The play on the kickoff return, it's a mess, and you just wonder, when are you going to see this difference in this Super Bowl caliber coaching staff? Now, again, I understand even with the coaching staff, they're trying to learn how to work together because this is not just a whole staff coming in having been together for years and years. They're still trying to figure each other out, but it was a mess yesterday.
And I think the funny thing, if you take a look at this team, at least on defense, the most dependable guy that has brought it is a guy that hadn't played in 5 years, in Alden Smith. Everyone else, what is DeMarcus Lawrence doing?
Stealing money.
Yeah, I'm watching the end of the game. He's on the sideline. Like they need to make a critical stop. He's on the sideline watching, collecting his $20+ million a year. I can't explain what's happening there, but the defense isn't good. The offense, yes, you're correct. The offensive line, as I mentioned last week, was my biggest concern for them offensively. But I thought they did a pretty good job in the second half, and I think they may have to just keep Martin at tackle for now because it might be the best option.
He's their best offensive lineman, and better to have him on the edge to give Dak a chance.
Yeah.
But the running game, you had Zeke. I think Zeke visited the CBD store over the weekend in Seattle because he looked so out of it yesterday and dropped 3 passes. He ended up with less than 40 yards, I believe. It was just not a pretty performance in any way, shape, form, or fashion for the Cowboys. Tony Pollard, if I ever see him on a kickoff return again, I'm going to lose my mind. What was that there on the goal line? And that he comes out, muffs it, then barely looks like he wants to pick it up. They end up with the ball on the 1 yard line. Zeke slips and ends up with a safety. It was just a mess. And again, it goes back to what I was saying before. How is it they were even had a chance to win the ball game when it was all said and done? It's incredible.
Right, and it's why. And look, we've gone back and forth and talked about this whole Dak thing and his contract. If you want to know what this team would look like without Dak at quarterback, I don't think you would have to picture that mess. What that would be. I think Dak's making himself a lot of money. The Cowboys should have paid him. Now they're gonna have to pay him even more because we are seeing that right now. This team, they're gonna go as far as whatever Dak can do to carry them. The one good thing is they're not going to play Russell Wilson every week. They have played 3 good offenses to start the season. I don't think we're going to see the Cowboys giving up this many points every week. But when they play talented offenses and talented quarterbacks, it's going to be a shootout. But I think, look, I'm not the Cowboys fan, so I'm looking at this, from a more outsider perspective. I think the Cowboys are going to be okay. Do I think they're a Super Bowl team? Not from what I've seen, but I do think they're a playoff team. And the thing is, if you get into the tournament, anything can happen. The way Dak has been playing, I think he would scare anybody. And they have so many – who was the other kid? We talked about –
Cedric Wilson.
Yeah, and Cedric Wilson out of nowhere, he has a huge game. And it's not Gallup. It's not Cooper. It's not CeeDee Lamb. They have so many weapons. They're gonna scare a lot of teams with their offense. If they can get the protection right, they're gonna score a lot of points. It's just the defense is gonna. Brian, the defense has to do something. If you're gonna give up plays, you give up plays, but you have to get turnovers, you have to get sacks, you got to get something to help contribute.
They have one professional secondary player, and that's Trayvon Diggs. He played fantastic yesterday. And the play to run down a receiver who was getting ready to score and punch that ball out with the effort that he made, even though he had been burned, that just tells you what kind of a player this kid's going to be.
And but that the rest could have ultimately saved – if he doesn't make that play, the game would have been over well before, what happened there late in the fourth quarter. So, it was a Leon Lett kind of play.
Absolutely.
Great effort.
But he didn't quit till the whistle, and it saved him a touchdown. The thing that's disturbing, though, is when you look at the number – I felt like I was watching the LSU-Mississippi State game all over again because I was watching wideouts running, and there was a 5-yard gap between them and the corner they burned. And Russell Wilson was just dropping it in there. It was like throwing it into a garbage can. I will tell you, there's a couple of things that were very disturbing. When you have the ball with 1:47 left in the game and you've got 3 timeouts, that is an eternity.
Oh, yeah.
To score
in today's NFL, that's a long time.
And yet what we saw were 2- and 3-yard passes over the middle, not trying to take shots, not trying to get to the sidelines. And I just want to know, where is Mike McCarthy's offense in this? Or are we still running Jason Garrett's offense with Kellen Moore calling the plays? Or is it Dak? Is Dak just – you saw Dak take shots. He was throwing the deep ball about as well as you could ask a guy to throw it and scoring on it. But when he got into that part of the ball game, is it because he was just checking down, wanting to be ultra careful? Or it was incredible. They had that much time in the ball game and 3 timeouts, and all you saw him doing was just getting 2 and 3 yards at a time, throwing 6-yard passes. And that was frustrating, especially when you're talking about the weapons that Dallas has.
Yeah, and then that dinking and ducking then in turn led to basically a panic throw at the end into the end zone.
And there are a lot of people saying that's one of the things that points to whether Dak is an elite quarterback or not, because he did a fantastic job just to stay on his feet and get out of the mess that he was in. But then he threw the panic throw rather than throw it out of bounds and live to play one more play.
Yeah.
It's hard to fault him. in that situation because, again, he had to make some kind of ridiculous, strong, athletic play just to keep his feet. But then he threw it into a crowd and he never had a chance.
The problem for Dak right now is the margin of error is so slim
Mm-hmm.
because of the way the defense is playing that any mistake he makes is going to really stand out. So, it wasn't, he shouldn't have thrown it, but the way he had played, I can't, they did not lose that game because of Dak Prescott. They were only in that game because of Dak Prescott. And I do think, again, you look at the schedule, the beginning of their opening part of the schedule was tough. I think it is going to settle down a little bit. And when they get into these divisional games, I mean, we're seeing the Eagles are a dumpster fire, and the Giants in Washington don't look like they're any better. So the Cowboys are clearly the best, most talented team, and I think that'll eventually take shape as we get in deeper into the year.
Couple of things from the rest of the league. The Cowboys 1-2 now, and they play Cleveland next week. And we talk about the offensive line. Miles Jack is going to be one of the guys they got to keep off of Dak's back next week. So that offensive line, the focus is going to be there. But I know Mike McCarthy was saying, they were just so ragged and so sloppy on the field in all areas, and that's got to get cleaned up. They got to take care of the football. There was a lot to like about that game yesterday, but there was also a lot that needs to be fixed. And again, that defense is atrocious right now. And they were supposed to, again, when Aldon Smith is your best player on defense, and you've got these high-paid defensive players like Lawrence and like your linebackers, and and then you've got this, these babies in diapers playing in your secondary. And not giving him any help because you're not getting a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson. They did get a little pressure on him yesterday, and that kept him in the ball game. But they got some big time problems. As far as games that interested you around the NFL, of course, I keep an eye on the Bengals. And yes, they tied the Eagles yesterday. The Eagles are terrible. We know that. The Bengals are 0-2-1. But Joe Burrow, I don't know if you saw it, but he took a hit yesterday where he had to leave the ball game for one play. I'm amazed he didn't leave for the year with the hit that he took, and ended up with a 105.5 quarterback rating, 31 out of 44, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers, playing behind a line that makes Dallas's look like all pros at every position. So I'm loving Joe Burrow right now. And I think if the Bengals ever put anything around him, they got a chance to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think Bengals fans for the first time in forever should have some genuine excitement. On the other side, the one reason I'm glad you pointed that game out, Brian, I had been a Carson Wentz defender in the past. I thought he'd had some unlucky breaks, but it's funny because we talk about the Cowboys should have paid Dak. The Eagles paid Wentz with less of a body of work than Dak. And you have to really wonder, are they regretting that decision? Maybe the Cowboys are going to have to pay Dak more, but I think I would feel better. I would feel better paying more knowing I did the right thing than paying maybe a little less, but maybe still overpaying heavily for a guy that I just don't know. I feel like Wentz has gotten worse. I don't know if it's the injuries have taken their toll, but he just does not look confident. And it's why I think we're sitting here talking about all the Cowboys' problems. The Cowboys are fine because as bad as things have been defensively, there is no one in that division that can match up with them, in my opinion, right now, from what I've seen through 3 weeks. So, Burrow looked better than Wentz, and that's a problem. If you're the Eagles, that's a huge problem.
When you got a brand new rookie that's just fresh out and he's doing it against good teams.
Didn't have any preseason, and Wentz is the guy that is already on his second contract. And he throws interceptions, he misses open receivers, he's running for his life. I don't know what to make of him.
One of the other games that caught my eye, looks like Tom Brady took the hard coaching he got from Bruce Arians. Bruce was talking about bad decisions Brady made a week or so ago. Yesterday, he lit it up against Denver. I'm sorry to bring that up to you, but guy was 25 out of 38, 297, 3 touchdowns, quarterback rating 115.8. He looked like a 10 years younger Tom Brady yesterday.
I mean, he was better. I wouldn't make too much of it because right now Denver is, I mean, they're without all of their best players. And, I mean, basically, it's not good right now. There was no pass rush. That's the thing. If you don't get pressure on Brady, he's going to look like he's back in the early 30s. I do think I had mentioned this a week or two ago when Peyton Manning came to Denver. They started slow, and then once he got comfortable, they took off. And I think you're going to see the same thing with Brady. I still think the Bucs probably are going to win that division because I think that ultimately they're going to beat out the Saints. So, but yeah, he looked a lot better. And Gronk I think Gronk had 2 catches the entire season until yesterday, and then he was much more part of the offense. They did lose one of their best receivers, Godwin, to injury, and I don't know how long he'll be out, but Brady looked like Brady yesterday.
Texans 0-3. Should you panic? Is it over, or do they have a chance?
I don't think it's over because they've had a tough start schedule-wise. I think the difference between this year, though, because the Texans have started 0-3 before and won that division, I think the difference this time is you can't count on that happening because the Titans are 3-0, so they're already 3 games back of Tennessee. The Colts look, outside of that blowing the first game of the season, the Colts are 2-1. I think it's going to be tough. I think I'd pick the Texans to win like 7 games this year. So I don't like their defense. And for them to get shut out in the second half yesterday, they looked good in the first half and then the offense just went away. So I don't know that I'd panic quite yet because we've seen them rebound before and it has been a tough open to the season. But they've got a big hill to climb because they're already 3 games back in their division.
And one other note, the Saints losing to Green Bay last night, but the thing and it was only a touchdown difference in the ball game, but the thing that was encouraging for New Orleans is that Drew Brees looked old the first 2 ball games. He looked like he'd lost all of his arm strength. He just didn't look good at all. Last night he had a good night. So that has to give people down in the Bayou area at least some hope that the Saints can get it, because the Saints were supposed to come into this year as one of the best teams in the NFC. And the first 3 ball games, it didn't look like that, with Brees really struggling. But it looks like he's getting better now.
Yeah, and I have been one that has been critical of Brees and his arm strength. I think defenses, if they're smart, they just shrink the field because he won't throw it more than 5 yards down the field. And really, he really didn't last night either. The Emmanuel Sanders touchdown pass, I think, was maybe 15 yards, and that was been stretching the field for him. But I don't think you can count on Alvin Kamara catching a 1-yard pass and turning it into a 75-yard touchdown every week. He was amazing yesterday, by the way.
He's pretty good.
But I don't think they're going to have to start stretching the field at least a little bit. The funny thing in that game, Brian, is I've been critical of Brees, but I think the play that they took Brees out is the reason they lost, because they did that gadget play where they take Brees out and they fumbled the ball. And, if they would have kept the ball, they would have probably went down and scored, took the lead, and who knows, they might win that game. So Brees is still your best option, but I think they found something better yesterday, but they're still not stretching the field. It's all dink and dunk.
Saturday finally felt normal to me.
I told my friend I know we had a few weeks of games, but it was the first Saturday that felt like college football was back.
You had SEC games on from noon until after 10:30 that night. You had chaos. You had Oklahoma getting beaten for the 2nd straight year by Kansas State.
Baby.
And that's after having a big lead in the first half and seemingly having the game under control. But Spencer Rattler looked like a freshman there in the second half, and they bid it in Norman. So huge win for Kansas State, and it dropped Oklahoma all the way down out of the top 20 into, I think, 21 or something. I don't remember what the ranking is, but it dropped them way down.
Yeah, and being a K-State fan, for those of you that don't know, my uncle played at Kansas State, so when I was a baby, they would take me to Norman and watch.
What happened to you?
70. But as good as that was for K-State, a devastating loss, in my opinion, for the Big 12, because K-State had lost a couple weeks ago to Arkansas State. So you see Texas struggle. I mean, Texas somehow pulled a rabbit out of their hat coming back against Texas Tech. But
They're
OU,
back.
What's that?
They're back.
So it doesn't look. I mean, your team OU has been the only Big 12 team that's made the playoffs, and now you have a home loss to a K-State team. By the way, Brian, that was without 7 starters, without their entire secondary.
Yep.
I mean, they barely had enough guys to get on the bus and get down to Norman, and they still found a way. And OU's defense could not stop them. K-State scored 5 straight possessions in the second half.
I'm telling you that get in this bizarre year where we won't see the Big Ten and the Pac-12 playing until the last weekend in October, the first weekend in November. I'm going to make this prediction right now. The Big 12 is not going to make the college playoffs this year.
Yeah, I don't.
The entire conference is hideous. The defenses in this conference are a joke. And in Texas's case, Tom Herman fired both coordinators last year to get this fixed, and his defense gave up 56 points to Texas Tech, which is not. They're not a great football team. Okay, we're not talking about Oklahoma here. What if they give up that?
Baptist, wasn't it?
Huh?
Hadn't they barely beat Houston
Yes,
Baptist? Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. So if Tom Herman fired his defensive coordinator and brought in a guy that was supposed to get this fixed, and this is a veteran Texas team, this was the year. This is what everybody was pointing to. This was the year that he was supposed to be in a position to finally get it back where it should be in Austin. And they were fighting for dear life just to get out of there on Saturday night.
The only thing I will say, because of the weird, we don't know if the Big Ten and if the Pac-12 will have enough games that allow them into the playoff. I could see, and I'm not saying this will happen, but the only chance I see the Big 12 now of happening is if Texas would run the table. And was it a couple years ago that OU's defense was awful, but they were scoring at a historic pace?
That's every year.
But
that's for the last 7 years.
Their defense was even worse than it had normally been. If Texas, if Sam Ehlinger can have a Heisman-type season and they're putting up 60 a game and they go undefeated, but they're winning 60 to 53 games, maybe they could squeak in because there's no other alternatives. But I think that's the only real possibility. And maybe Baylor. Baylor is the only Big 12 team that's really played defense the last couple of years, and we'll see how Baylor turns out. But I think OU pretty much ended any chance that they had.
Well, and I'm not hiding from this. I am going to bring up the fact that LSU. I was dumb enough, along with, and LSU fans, I can say this because I am one. We're all dumb. We automatically think we ought to be challenging for the national championship every year. But the reality is, Saturday against Mississippi State, when KJ Costello lit them up for over 600 yards passing, there was one player on the field to start the game on defense for LSU that was a starter in the national championship game this past year. And your best defensive back was spent the night in the hospital, Darryl Stingley Jr., an All-American, a Heisman candidate. And so what you had back there in the secondary were freshmen, transfers from places like Nichols that were just there for depth, people that would never have even been on the field under normal circumstances. And KJ Costello could not have been more perfect. And I don't know if this means Mike Leach's offense is actually going to be that good week in and week out. I think a team like Alabama with a strong defense front to back is going to give them a lot of problems. You can't run the ball for 9 yards in the SEC and think you're going to win ball games like they did the other day. But, all things considered, Mississippi State looked really impressive. LSU lost by 10, and they got things to fix.
And I think there was a point in the game when they went over the list of how many guys LSU had lost from last year's team, and not just guys, but dudes that are in the league, that are in the NFL, that were first-round picks, are guys that are starting right now. And you would like to think that they can compete at that level all the time, but when you lose that many, and I believe they had said in the broadcast, they had the fewest returning starters of any national champion
I think a total of 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which in recent history, that's unheard of. And the thing that magnified it even more, you had guys that you thought were going to come back, opt out, with COVID and everything. So I do think LSU, I guess the good news for LSU was the offense looked horrible at the beginning and they figured it out. So, I mean, going forward, hopefully they have their offense figured out. But hats off, in my opinion, hats off to Leach,
Hey,
Mississippi State, because I don't care who they have on the field. You go into Baton Rouge and beat LSU. That's a good win. And for his first win in the SEC, he'll at least make Mississippi State and the SEC even more entertaining. And that was a good win for them.
well, and there are people saying that was the biggest win in Mississippi State history. So it was a huge win for the program. And the one last point, Vanderbilt goes into College Station and scares the crap out of Texas A&M. This, again, another team that's supposed to be this year. This is going to be the year. And they turned the ball over 3 times against a team that was playing a freshman quarterback, and they got to fight for their lives to get out of there 17-12. So.
And it was an ugly game.
Yes.
There's no other way to put it. It was ugly. At this point, Kellen Mond is what he is. I
don't get it. It's the most overrated college quarterback I've ever seen. To hear all the hype about how great he is, and I don't see him any better now than he was 2 years ago.
And I also too. How much of this falls on Jimbo? I mean, everyone.
All of it.
Acting. So excited to get him there. His history. And they haven't gotten better. Like, there hasn't been a process of improving. I would argue his first year was the best year when you felt like you had hope and something to build on, and it hasn't happened. So
I can just tell you, they're going into Tuscaloosa this weekend. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, to struggle like that against Vandy when you're having an all SEC schedule this year, that doesn't bode well.
Well, I'm really interested to see how the Aggie fans react if Alabama punches them in the mouth and wipes the floor with them next weekend, because Alabama looked fantastic Saturday.
Yeah, meanwhile, Bama just keeps doing what Bama does.
Well, I was going to say it's real clear. Clemson, Alabama, right now, 2 best teams in the country. Florida looked pretty good.
They looked
really good. So nobody in the Big 12 does it for me. We're going to have to see, what goes on from here. I'm not a Notre Dame believer either, so somebody's going to have to step up. But I think you're going to get 2 teams from the SEC in right now based on –
that's the thing.
And then Ohio State on that, will come in and look great, I'm sure.
Right. If you get 2 SEC teams in and then Clemson, there still has to be another team. So
that'll be Ohio State.
Yeah, and if for some reason the Big Ten didn't have enough games, somebody, if it's Notre Dame, if it's a Big 12, a Texas, someone's got to back in or get in there.
Couple of quick minutes. We're doing this. We're recording for Tuesday's show. The Dallas Stars, we thought were dead in the water in the Stanley Cup playoffs, down 3-1. They win a thriller in double overtime on Saturday, so they're actually alive in a Game 6. Do you think they can take it to a Game 7?
Since this is going to be on after the game, I think they will. They've gone 7 games, I think, in every series. Hockey, by the way, it's amazing to me. These guys just beat the heck out of each other. They went double overtime, and then they have to be back on the ice 2 days later. But this team has a lot of grit. They are not the most talented, and I've watched a lot of them in this playoff run, but they don't give up. They're a strong defensive team. I think Tampa is probably better, but in hockey, the better team doesn't always win. So see if they can pull it out. And then if you get to a Game 7, anything can happen.
All right, we're going to wrap it up on this afternoon for this week, and we'll be back on next week. And it ought to be fun talking about Alabama and Texas A&M next weekend, and the Cowboys trying to see what they do. Who knows? Ryan, thanks very much as always for hanging out with us.
Always fun.
All right, I'm Brian Houston. Bryan and Ryan, you can check it out on YouTube. We post it every morning, every Tuesday morning, really early before breakfast, and then I'll try to repost it later in the week, so make sure you get a chance to see it and leave some comments, tell your friends about it, share it. We'd love to have more than 5 viewers. Have a good one, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next week.